Hello, I am Yasmin Bannerman, and you are listening to The Sirens of Audio.
Why does he have to start whippersnipping the instant I start recording? I just don't understand. G'day audiophiles, you're listening to The Sirens of Audio, the podcast that explores the universe of Doctor Who in the audio medium. My name is Dwayne.
And my name is Philip. G'day Dwayne, g'day
Just checking,
audiophiles.
just checking you got it right today, Philip. And now I've tried to say something funny, I've had a complete mind blank.
Punishment.
Today we're going to be speaking with a very established Big Finish writer and also a writer from the classic series, and that is Andrew Smith. Very much looking forward to hearing what Andrew has to say, Philip.
Yes, me too. I remember being quite jealous when I was young. Someone a few years older than me was writing for the TV show. But yeah, it's interesting to see how much work he had to put in to get there. We're going to have a great chat with him.
Yeah, you may be under the impression because he was so young that he just rocked up and that's how it happened. But you may find the whole story a little bit more in depth than you might perceive.
Indeed.
But before we do that, Philip, you know what I see? You know what I see up ahead?
No, Dwayne.
It is a rabbit hole. Here we go. Right. Because we've got a classic Doctor Who writer on, it got me thinking about the fact that he's cross-pollinated to Big Finish. And there are some writers who've done that. And it got me thinking about the quality of Big Finish authors. So Andrew Smith, obviously quality writer, and he's doing more and more of it. Why hasn't the Doctor Who television series taken more of these writers out of Big Finish? They took a few out in the early years, but don't seem to have done that for quite some time. Any theories on why that's the case? Do they just not have the ability to write for TV? Is it lack of experience? What do you think is a number of things? I mean, you're reading the Russell T book, so any insights from that you can answer that question with?
Well, certainly with the Russell T book, he was prepared to use writers from other areas and realised that there's some great stories out there. Certainly, I mean, the thing about reading the book is the amount of rewriting Russell always did. So even with really well-established authors, there was some writers he wouldn't rewrite, but that's a very, two or three. Everybody else he rewrote extensively, but he still appreciated other people's input, ideas, thinking, and then he just reworked it into the tone he wanted. I don't know why more recently people haven't, the showrunners haven't done that, because there is just such amazing depth of writing out there. And Big Finish writers just get better all the time. I don't see why they aren't capable of writing it. I mean, certainly they need guidance. One of the things that Russell does, which I've worked out about, is as he writes a script, he knows what a scene's going to cost him. And to do this scene on screen is going to cost this. I'm not sure Big Finish writers would have that sort of knowledge, because they can put whatever they want on the canvas.
That's true. That's true.
And so they wouldn't know what is going to cost a gigantic amount, what's going to cost a small amount. But that being said, if they were being guided by the right sort of producer or showrunner, that shouldn't be an issue, because they'd be guiding them along the way and helping them to learn those skills. I think it's been to the detriment of the show.
In the old days, that was the job of the script editor, and these days, I guess, script editor plus showrunner sort of overlooking the whole thing as well. I mean, they've had a classic series writer on the show, Rona Munro. Why not have someone like Andrew Smith come back and do something? Why not have someone who is firmly established with Big Finish as writing epic stuff? Like, what about Matt Fitton? What about John Dorney? What about Nicholas Briggs, dare I say? All these writers are very, very competent when it comes to storytelling, so I don't see why that can't translate from audio to the small screen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the storytelling, their scripting, their characterizations, everything they do is so spot on. We just haven't got the visuals. And I can't believe it'd be that hard a step to actually go one step further. So, yeah, I think, Russell, when you're coming back, there's some great talent to tap into. And, I'd love to see some of these writers being exposed more, because the stuff they're doing, it's so creative, it's emotional, it's powerful, it taps everything that you want a good story to tap. Yeah, I'd love to see more of it.
All right, let's throw in a trailer for one of Andrew Smith's early Big Finish adventures, and we'll be back with him in just a moment.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who The Companion Chronicles, The Invasion of E-Space.
I am Romana Dvora Trelunda, known as Romana, a Time Lord of the Pridonian Chapter. It's been decades since I said goodbye to the Doctor at the Gateway, and remained behind in this universe of E-Space.
I am Lead Investigator Marnie Tellis of the Verudan Federal Investigation Directorate. I am a material witness in the inquiry into the events of the 10th segment on the month of Ironrod. There are so many personal stories about that day. The day we thought our entire planet was about to be destroyed.
What's that?
Something's coming through the CVE.
Then on the screen, behind the clouds, out of the CVE, a warship appeared, a massive battle cruiser. The discs will settle on a surface and activate all over your planet, all over your moon, and on all the ships you have stationed here.
Some of them are already here. Romana, they have started killing already.
They would certainly kill to keep their presence secret, and tell us, look, their main force is almost here. There's one last battle to fight. But now we're nearing the end.
We command here now. If you continue to fight, you will die.
Subscribers get more at bigfinish.com.
Few writers have managed to write for both the classic series and also Big Finish. One of the ones today, though, who has is our special guest, Andrew Smith. Welcome, Andrew.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you on board. You have a reputation, well, you've got a history which is unusual because, of course, you first wrote for the classic series, but also you were very young. So I want to talk about that in a moment, but do you want to just give us a little bit of background about where you grew up and, a bit about your family?
Oof. Yeah, well, I'm from Scotland, born and mostly raised in Glasgow. Spent a couple of years when I was about 2 or 3 in Blackpool, in the north of England. But brought up in mainly Rutherglen in Glasgow, and I was into writing from a very young age. Got a typewriter as a Christmas present when I was about 7 or 8, I think, and never looked back. And that was a thing back then. Not everyone could type. That kind of gave me a heads up when I was sort of looking to get established professionally, as it were.
You got to achieve what millions of fans would have wanted to do when you were still a child, really, and you got to write for Doctor Who. So how did it come about that you managed to be an author on Full Circle?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that my age was kind of immaterial to me. I mean, I wasn't writing in and saying, "Hi, I'm Andrew and I'm 14 or 15 or 16 or whatever." I just sent ideas in as I would have done if I'd been in my 20s. So it's kind of immaterial to me. And I'm not sure if my age ever became apparent, maybe until I came down and met Douglas Adams. I was 16 at that point. But what I did, I sent my first idea in, which was actually as a full script, to Robert Holmes. And that was around the time Talons Wang Chang was being transmitted. So I'm not sure, when was that? Was that 77?
77, yep.
Yeah. That came back with some nice notes. He actually suggested that I just maybe not send ideas into Doctor Who, but kind of try other original things, plays and things. But I said if he didn't mind, I'd like to continue submitting ideas. And he put me onto a book called Writing for Television, written in the 70s, written by Malcolm Hulke, which showed me how scripts are actually laid out. And I think that was important as well, because it meant when I presented a script, it actually looked like a proper formatted television script. So after Robert, I sent a script in to Anthony Reid, and he sent that back with a lot of annotations on it, some very, very constructive comments. And one of which was, aha, you're a fan, when I mentioned something about isomorphic controls of the TARDIS. And I think I was kind of passing one script editor to the other, someone worth keeping an eye on. And so I sent a couple of ideas into Douglas Adams, and by this point I was sending in storylines, so 2 or 3 page ideas for stories, and he invited me down to speak to him while Creature from the Pit was being recorded. So I was in studio for that and had nice long chats with Douglas, and he got me my first alcoholic drink, which is a nice little anecdote I like to repeat to people.
So
and
did they have any idea of your age at that stage, or when did they work out how young you were?
I don't think so. I mean, I hadn't mentioned it. I mean, obviously, I came and met Douglas. Having said that I did a play for television when I was 18, and there's a piece in the TV Times, the local TV listings magazine, or national TV listings magazine, that mentioned this upcoming play that I'd written, and I was 23. And I spoke to Robert Love, the head of drama at Scottish Television, who'd been interviewed for. I said, "Where'd you get the idea I was 23?" He said, "Well, they asked me your age, and I guess it's about right, isn't it?" And I said, "Well, no, I'm actually 18." So I don't know. I think I maybe did look a bit older than I was. So, but I don't know if my age ever really came into it, and it certainly didn't have any significance for me. I was just writing stories and hoping one would be picked up. And then there was an idea I'd actually sent into Douglas called The Planet That Slept, that was picked up by Chris. So when Chris took over, I mean, we had a telephone conversation where he told me I couldn't possibly write for the series because I lived too far away, but come down and we'll have a chat about how you'd get into writing otherwise. And then I came down to London, went into his office, and the first thing he said was, "Oh, we're thinking of commissioning you to write a scene breakdown and a script for the first episode, and then if we like that, we'll commission the rest." And I was like, wow, because that was not what I was expecting. And then, so I wrote that, and a week later got the phone call saying, "Yeah, we love it. Do the other episodes." Yeah.
Well, how did those two script editors sort of differ to you in your eyes? Douglas Adams and Chris Bidmead, quite different characters from my perspective. But what about you?
I mean, obviously, my interaction with Douglas was a few letters and ideas I sent to him, and that one time I met him. Whereas with Chris, Chris, I got to know pretty well. I saw him quite a bit, and we obviously worked together and developing the script. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of Chris went into the script. He did a redraft where he added quite a bit or changed quite a bit, particularly with the 4th episode. So it's hard to say. I mean, there were different characters. It's hard to say how they'd differ. I mean, the one thing that they very much had in common was they were just very open to me and constructive, and are the two guys who are really responsible for me getting that amazing start and that boost, which boosted my self-confidence apart from anything else, and I'm indebted to them both, and Douglas as well. I mean, just by that encouragement and support that he gave me at the time, and I know he tipped me off to Chris again, someone to watch and might be worth taking a chance on. Between them, I just owe them so much. In terms of the way they worked, it's difficult for me to comment on, Douglas as a script editor beyond what everyone knows about what he did on the series and on series 17.
How did your love of Doctor Who first start? Because you're obviously a fan beforehand.
Yeah, I can't remember a time when I didn't watch Doctor Who every Saturday, really. I mean, my early, I'm sure I must as a little, and it started when I was just over 1 year old. But it just seemed to me like it was always on a Saturday afternoon. And my earliest memories are of Patrick Troughton with the second Doctor with Jamie, particularly Zoe. But I did watch earlier episodes. My earliest definite episode is Yeti on the Underground. So when I heard the Web of Fear was coming back, I was over the moon to see that, because I do remember watching it. I've got memories of Cybermen. I mean, the Cybermen are my Doctor Who monster because they were just so well used in the Patrick Troughton era and in the comics that I was reading at the time. But my memories of them, definitely the Invasion, but it might be I remember them from stories before the Web of Fear, but I just can't place that exact story. And quarks are, I love a quark. I don't care what anyone thinks about the Dominators. I watched that when I was 6 years old, and I had a dream or a nightmare of quarks that I still remember, which was of quarks coming over a cliff top. And then when the VHS of it was released, and I saw it again for the first time in years, and there was actually that footage of quarks coming over this ridge, which I remember having a dream about. That was quite something. So whatever you say about the story in the Dominators isn't the best story, I'll admit that, but there's just that little chemical reaction in my brain when I watch that takes me back to being 6 years old. So yeah, from a very, very early age, it was just there. And as I got older, and I think there are people of a certain age who, I think I was around 12 when Tom Baker took over, and I think the Pertwee years and the Baker years were just such a sweet spot. And I think Tom Baker with Philip Hinchcliffe and Robert Holmes, again, was such a great time for the series. And I think if you're around, I was around 12, 13, 14 for that, which I think really was a great age to be watching Doctor Who of that quality and of that type and of the type of stories that they were telling. And at that time as well, it was the time the Planet of Evil was being broadcast. So I think this was 75. I was in Blackpool on holiday with my mum and dad, and went to the Doctor Who exhibition, which is where I discovered Target novels and novelizations. So I hoovered some of them up. And then what I started doing was audio recording the series every Saturday and typing them up, doing my own novelizations, if you like. And that was good because I think that's what gave me an ear for what good dialogue, or putting dialogue on the page. Because that's a bit of an art in itself, writing dialogue that actually works. And I think that's where I picked it up. And I was recording other stories. I would record like episodes of the Sweeney, write them up as well, and other programs, specifically just to get a feel of what these things look like on the page, as well as retelling the stories.
So at that stage, your desire was to be a writer, by the sense of it.
Yeah, that was kind of an aspiration from an early age. I just always loved writing, and I wrote a lot of stuff for myself. Yeah, and had that in mind. At the same time, I also had an interest in the police, and that was something that, they got me with a career film at school, and I was really interested in that. I always kind of wanted to have a life that, at the end of it, I could look back and say, you really lived a life, sort of thing. And I could see the possibilities on that with the police, kind of just to have a bit of excitement and adventure. But also wanted to, wanted this career as a writer as well. And so that they were two things that were always important to me. And I've just been very lucky with how it panned out. And the people I met, Douglas and Chris, again, they'd been different individuals in those posts. It could be very different. There's no question. I mean, as a new writer and a very young writer, and it was quite a chance they took taking on that story.
Did you spend much time with John Nathan Turner?
Yeah. Saw John quite a bit and spoke to him on the phone quite a bit as well. And I remember John came into the first meeting I had with Chris, because we had a meeting. It's quite a long meeting, going through my storyline and then talking about how we develop that and change it, what was wanted for the series. And I've still got Chris's notes on that, actually, on what we talked about. One thing I remember from John, I was just really impressed, because I just liked where he was taking the series. Season 17 hadn't left a very good impression with me, to be honest, just for the amount of humour in it. Particularly a couple of scenes I remember from the Horns of Nimon, where I thought things had got a little bit silly. And John clearly wanted to bring it back. And that's another thing where I was lucky. I think, I think in another season, Full Circle might have turned out differently in tone, but in terms of what they were doing with Tom and Chris's approach to stories and John's overall view of what he wanted for season 18, it was a good time to come on board.
So with your first outline of Full Circle, I think it was called, was it The Planet That Slept originally? Was that your
Planet That Slept. I wish it still was.
You like that title better still?
Oh God, yeah.
It's a great title.
I couldn't understand it. I got a phone call. I think it was John actually wanted it changed. I got a phone call from Chris telling me it was changing. It wasn't my idea at all. And he said, we're going to change it to Full Circle. Why? And he said, oh, John doesn't like titles. Have got the word "of" in the title. I said, well, it doesn't. The Planet That Slept. And Chris said, you said, yeah, it looks really good on the whiteboard, looks really good on the wall, the planet that slept. And I don't know. I don't know. Maybe John just got used to it and thought he'd have something else. I don't know. But
it's interesting because I mean, the planet that slept isn't a particular Doctor Who-ish title, but it is full circle. So it's not like they changed it to something more. When you did your first,
I think Chris said as well that it might not have fitted on the screen. I said, but yeah, we have the creature from the pit, which is longer. But and titles are still something that it's injured me, it's wounded me. People play around with my titles. I hate coming up with titles. I'll tell you that now. But when I do, I am very protective of them.
Have you had other titles changed on you that you still feel bitter about?
I'm going to claim the fifth. There's one. I'm not going to tell you what it is, though. But
okay.
But it was, actually, I did a play for radio called Goal, and it was a marathon runner. And I did that not long after Doctor Who. And then the producer got on to me and said, "What about the title? Should we change it?" I went, "Nope, just the principle. Nope, we're not changing it." And actually, in that case, we probably should have changed it. But but again, I was just so kind of sensitive about it at the time. No, that's the title. That's my title. We're having that one. They went, "Oh, okay." But yeah. So there you go.
So with your original storyline, who were the companions that you'd written for beforehand?
Ooh, I think probably was Romana. I mean, Adric didn't feature in it. I was given Adric to put into the story. But I think it must have been Romana. Yeah, it would have been. It would have been. Because I would have sent it in when Douglas was there. So I think, it would have been Romana. And K9. But actually K9's all right. But having his head knocked off was one of my earlier decisions. But so it was Romana. And it was quite different because the storyline actually had the Starliner crashing on the planet. So it was them crashing and then reacting to it. But it was in that script meeting. Here's an idea. It's actually a generational thing. And then that led towards a really different idea, which is that the Starliner citizens are actually the evolved Marshmen, which is the key of the story, and that's why it's called Full Circle as well.
Why did you find it hard to write or why didn't you like writing for K9? Was it the fact that he was like a magic fix, or was it?
I think that at the time, K9, I thought was a thing for the kids, and I wasn't a kid.
17, you're grown up.
Yeah, I'll do that. But I just thought it was a thing for the kids, and a little bit silly. That was just my opinion. I get the affection for him, but it wasn't really for me. So I know he was taken out of other stories in the season, and I've read things that I was told to take him out. No, that was all me. And I do think actually it worked really well. I think because people didn't expect it. A number of people have said, particularly as young kids, they watched that and it had, something that really struck them. K9 having his head.
Yeah, it is a shocking scene. It would have been for the kids.
Yeah, and that's what you want. You want to make an impact.
It wasn't long before you started writing the Target novel for it as well. Was that especially? How did the Target novel come about?
I was approached and I was asked for permission for Terence to do it, Terence Dix. I said, no, I'd like to do it, actually, please. And I was keen as well that it should be, very close to what was put on TV. Some of the novels have gone away from that. And I also wanted it. I also want it to be quite a rich text as well. Again, some of them have become a little bit light. A little he said, she said. Still good books, but just a little light from the Target novels that I remembered. And then there was a delay. Actually, it didn't come out for a couple of years after. It was delayed for at least several months because there was a writer's strike, and I was with the Writers Guild, and so that meant I didn't put pen to paper for a little while because of that. And I think it came out sometime in 1982. But I was very pleased with it. I was extremely pleased with it, and quite a few years ago, I came back to it after decades of not having looked at it, and my daughter asked me to read it to her as a bedtime story one night when she was little. And as I was reading it, I thought, again, just it feels very fully fresh to me, and I just thought it's just all right. quite like this. Yeah.
It's recently been released as an audiobook with Matthew Waterhouse reading it and John Leeson. Have you listened to the audiobook of it?
I have. I got it on the shelf behind me actually, and I've got the electronic copy as well, and very good. Yeah, very good. I thought Matthew does an excellent job of reading it, and again, there's some nice sound design on it. Lovely stuff. Yeah.
So when Full Circle's being recorded, were you able to come down to the recording? Did you actually get to meet the actors and people?
Yeah, I was at all of it actually. I was at the read through. I was at all 3 days of location filming, and I was at all the studio days as well. And it was great. Yeah, got to know. I hung out with the Outlaws, June and Bernard and Richard. I remember Bernard and I particularly. I remember going up Soho with him one time, and and we tended to have lunch together as well because we're around the same age. But yeah, chatting with Tom and Lala, and George Baker was fantastic. He was really good. He made a point of chatting to me, and I remember one time he and the two other Decider, James and Alan were going offsetting upstairs, and he saw me and went, "Oh, come over and have a chat." Just such a lovely guy, and he wrote me a lovely letter afterwards as well. It was very encouraging and very complimentary. So yeah, and of course I knew him as an actor. He was very well known in British television. I don't know how well known he was in Australia, but he played a character called Bowler on a series of that name, but also a comedy series, The Fenn Street Gang, which originally was something called Please Sir. I'm not sure if his character was in that. And he'd been in I, Claudius. And he was a very, very well-known actor. And Richard Willis actually was someone I was so pleased when Richard was cast, because he'd been in a children's drama, quite a hard-hitting children's drama called The Feathered Serpent, set in Aztec times. I knew him from that. So for me, that was a choice casting for me, actually. I was so pleased that he was in it. I was such a fan of The Feathered Serpent. But I was at all the recordings.
So all that cast now, you've gone back now to write for again.
Yeah.
So have you had more dealings with them, and did you meet them in the recordings later on?
Yeah. I mean, also recently with the COVID, most of it has been home recording, but yeah, I've been to the studio recordings of almost all of the stories I've written. And it's funny, when I was the first one, and I've done quite a few for Tom now and for Lala, and for Matthew as well. The first one I did for Tom was a thing called The Magellan Grave for the Fourth Doctor Adventures. And that was recorded at the Wadhurst Studios, which is out in the countryside. It's only a 40-minute drive for me across country from here. And I was driving down there, and you know what? I was thinking, I'm not sure I'm looking forward to this, because Tom had been difficult back in the Full Circle recording days. And anyway, I got there, and I think I was the last one to get there. I walked in the green room, and Tom was sat by the door, and I introduced myself. I said, "Hello, I'm Andrew. I'm your writer." And he went, "Oh, hello." I said, "You probably won't remember me, but actually, I wrote one of your TV stories back in 1980." And he said, "Oh, I was terribly difficult back then." And I said, "Yes, you were." And then, but then we got on brilliantly. He was so good, and he is so good, and he still has so much energy. And what was nice as well was he knew the story so well. He's in the studio and he knew the story so well. We were recording in the morning, and he's talking about looking forward to recording scenes with a certain character in the afternoon, and he was so nice. And he's become a lovely old pussycat, really. And I love that. The fact, I was, a little bit in two minds of getting down for that recording, and now I look forward to recordings with Tom very, very much indeed.
I was going to ask you whether he'd been particularly difficult in studio, because that was his reputation that last year.
He's temperamental. I think it's all well recorded, but he was temperamental and snappy, and I mean, actually, in the very first morning in the studio, one of the first things we recorded was the opening TARDIS scenes, and there was a scene where K9 has to go around the TARDIS console. He goes around the back of it and out the other side. And actually, if you watch it again, what you'll notice is he comes out, K9's head is really dipped down. That's because he kept going round and crashing into it. And but there was a bit. Well, I'll clean this up for you. But Tom was crouched there. It's about take 3 or something. He said, "I don't know why we've got the effing thing. It's got an engine like an effing Massey Ferguson. Couldn't drive over a piece of effing sellotape." And yeah, that was first day in the studio with Tom Baker. But he'd have these comments to throw in from time to time.
So, having done a big BBC show, and you did a few other bits of writing, in the end, you went to the police force.
Yeah, I did. I did the writing for 4 years, and always had a contract. And I did a few dramas and TV and radio, and I did comedy sketch shows. And I was on the staff writers on a show called Kick Up the 80s. But I wrote things like Three of a Kind sketch show, and I think called Not the 9 O'Clock News. After 4 years, there was a thing where I found it very solitary, and in fact, that is still a thing for me now, where I'm kind of proactively working at keeping the socializing going, because this working from home thing is something that writers do all the time. It's not a new thing for us, but you need to work at actually socializing and meeting other people. And when it could be easy to just make that when you go to the studio or when you go to a writers meeting or something like that. So I did find it very solitary. And also, this is where my age came into it. I was very young with not much life experience, which doesn't help you as a writer. And then again, there was a thing, I was really interested in the police. And they got me with this career film at school. And I'd actually studied law for a while at Glasgow University, specifically because I thought that would help with a police application. So actually, I applied to Strathclyde Police, who didn't take me, and then I found that very odd, because I thought I'd done well at the exam and whatever, and I went in to see a superintendent that told me that because I was 21 and single, I wasn't likely to stay, so they preferred people in mid-20s who were married, which I found out later was totally illegal, against the Sex Discrimination Act, because he told me I'd come top in the exam. And I said, well, I was wasting my time coming in and seeing them, wasn't I? So I wouldn't say that. I said, well, what else could I have done? And I came top, and you still didn't take me. But that worked out for the best, because then I applied to the Met in London, and I got in there, and I joined the Met in September 1984, and was there for a 30-year career, and I had a blast. It was amazing. A real mix, a lot of excitement, bit of world travel as well, and thoroughly enjoyed it. It was the best mix. I had those 4 years, and then had the excitement, the companionship, and the security. But yeah, I'd say a couple of proper adventures in there as well. Some dodgy times, some risky times, but that's all part of the mix as well.
Have you ever written about that sort of time at all?
No, I wrote a thing. There's an original drama we did for Big Finish.
Transference.
And I wrote 2 episodes of that. And in that in particular, there's a couple of experiences of mine, including one, the character's doing a drugs raid where he tries to force his way into a room where the drug dealers are, and he gets stuck in the door, jammed in between the door and the wall, because the druggies are forcing the door shut. And one of them's got a carbon knife in his hand and is working up the courage to stab the character. Well, that happened to me. And I think it was 1986. We're doing a drugs raid on a couple of heroin dealers in Brixton. And I went through the door and got stuck. And I could see the guy sort of trying to work up the courage to stab me with this knife. And so I was in plain clothes. We went in mob-handed, went through the door. We shouted police, we went through the door, but maybe they didn't hear it. Because then someone behind me, because I couldn't get into the room and I couldn't get out of the room, and I was just waiting to be stabbed. And then someone behind me shouted, "Old Bill," which, if you don't know, it's police. Someone shouted, "Old Bill," and he looked at me and went, "Oh," and dropped the knife. They thought we were punters coming around to do them over for the drugs, apparently. Well, that's what they said. But yeah, So we hadn't shouted police loudly enough apparently when we came in the door. But that was a bit dodgy. There's a flying squad job I did as well, where early hours of the morning went in to do a bit of business, put a tracker on a car, and we disturbed a dog, and the guy came out looking for us with a torch and a shotgun. That was tasty. But we got away, and he didn't find us. He didn't know we were there in the end. So, but that was a bit tasty. But a great thing to kind of get away with, if you like. You
should speak to Jason about doing an original with some of your experiences from the Met. I mean, Transference is one of my favorite shows. I mean, Alex Kingston is spectacular in it.
I love doing it. I don't want to put too much jargon in there, but there are some things in there. I think if you're a police officer, that there are tons of phrases that people will get, and even things that aren't regularly used. Even something like the Mavellan Grave, which is partly based at Scotland Yard, the Scotland Yard as it was a few years ago, and there were things I could do there because I knew the building was going to be that new Scotland Yard was going to relocate to the river. So there were things I could put in there, like for instance, the locations of the counter-terrorism floors are where they're said to be in the story, and things like even the restaurant and things. The layout of the building is as it was, but Frank Skinner plays a detective chief inspector, and his central call sign is 2411. That was my central call sign when I was on special branch surveillance. That's another thing. Actually, when numbers turn up in my scripts, they're not random. I mean, there are things that we'll use, like a daughter's dates of birth and things, but my warrant number and certain shoulder numbers that I've had. For instance, 166 LD was my first shoulder number on division when I was at Brixton. LD is Lima Delta, which that's Brixton, and that appears in the first and Tarrans. 166 Lima Delta is a code to an encrypted communications channel. But 282 comes up because I was 282 Zulu Delta at Croydon, and I was 26 Lima Sierra at Streatham. So 26 282 come up. 183 174 is my warrant number, so that comes up, or in whole or in part. They get recycled quite regularly, those numbers.
So you had a long and engaging career, which I'd love to hear more about, but we're not actually a podcast about the Met Police.
It's not a police podcast, no.
But we do know the term "the Bill" out here because the most popular program for years was "The Bill,"
right?
Which I'm sure. Well, my cousin informs me it's got nothing to do with reality. And if people kept dying like that at any other station, you wouldn't work there.
I remember the very first episode of "The Bill." I watched that in the canteen at Hendon Police Training College. And there's a bit where Carver, the new recruit, Woodentop. It might even have been Woodentop we were watching rather than the Bill, but there's a drunk, and Carver says, "I'll take you home," and all of us in the room went, "No!" It's one of the first things you're told: never take a drunk home. Never take a drunk home. Never help a drunk out, because they're going to turn up in the morning. They're going to find that the 20 quid in the wallet is gone, and they're going to blame you for it. No, you don't take a drunk home.
Right.
But this whole room was just erupting with it,
It was in this trench. We removed 5 layers before we got to it. It was among remnants of clothing, also a small knife and a man's bracelet. The indications are that there was a violent event here, but our excavation has recovered genuine Iron Age relics. The discovery of this item, we can't explain it.
Doctor, it's a Mavellan power pack.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions, The Fourth Doctor Adventures, The Mavellan Grave.
Oh! The ground's moving! Something else is coming up!
Your people harmed. Please, put him down.
Oh no.
What?
We've got to get back to the dig. Everyone on this planet is in the most terrible danger.
Oh, come on.
Ugh, I'd forgotten how cold you Mavellans can be.
You're serious, aren't you?
If I can access these orders, we'll find out why Mavellans were on Earth 2,000 years ago.
Big Finish. We love stories.
Were you keeping up to date with what was going on in the Doctor Who universe through the 90s, or was that something off your radar? Were you a book reader, a novel reader? What was happening there?
I didn't really read a lot of the novel. I read a couple of the New Adventures ones that came out early on, and they weren't for me. They seemed very adult with quite mature themes that would never have been. Oh, sorry, my Alexa just pinged there if you heard it. But yeah, and there were things. I mean, it was fine, but they had things like sexual content and things that just made it seem to me it just didn't seem very Doctor Who. And it worked, it worked for most people and they so well. It just for me wasn't. It didn't relate to the kind of Doctor Who that I wanted to read, frankly. But I did otherwise, and actually, yeah, I was a Big Finish fan, as well as a Doctor Who fan. I was about 99 or 2000, and I was driving up to Scotland on the M6, stopped off at a service station, and I would always listen to an audiobook. So I went in to have a look at the audiobooks they had, and there were these, oh my God, there were full cast Doctor Who audios. Where the hell did these come from? I think Winter for the Adepts, Whispers of the Dead, I think were the first two that I got.
Yeah.
So they were, listening to like Colin and Peter and Nicola, and I just think, wow, this is great. They're doing.
They were just sitting in a service station.
Yeah, it was W.H. Smith used to stack them at the time. I've spoken to Jason about this. Yeah, it was fairly briefly that W.H. Smith stocked them, actually. So I was lucky to find them, but that's how I discovered them very early on. And then I just got them all as they came out. I think they were coming out like one a month or something like that at the time. And I remember being very annoyed, actually, a couple of years later when I was in Glasgow and coming down. I went into a bookstore to get a couple to listen to on the drive back down to London. And all they had was, they didn't have the cassettes anymore. They had them on CD. So this is about 2001. And I thought, oh, who the hell has a CD player in their car, for God's sake? And
no one now.
Yeah. But we don't even have them now, do we?
No, been and gone.
I was most aggrieved. So I bought, I think, Sword of Orion and Eye of the Scorpion. And I was aggrieved because I had to take them home and then put them onto tape, transfer them to tape so I could listen to them in the car on the way down. But yeah, and I love them. I hoovered them up. Still some great stories. My Red Dawn is an early one that I still go back to quite a bit to listen to.
So were you putting feelers out with Big Finish at the time, or were you just too busy with your work at that stage?
No, I was. For years, I was on a national counter-terrorism surveillance team, and that was very unpredictable hours. And the sort of thing, I could go out, I could leave home and say, in the morning and say, see you later. And then my wife wouldn't see me for 2 weeks because we'd get put on to another job. It's basically wherever the big CT job was in the country, we dealt with. We were the only armed counter-terrorism surveillance team in the country at the time. I mean, there's loads of them now, but we were the only one at the time. So we would be sent wherever the job was. And that might mean being away from home for a week or a couple of weeks, and then there'd be another job, and you might be on an early shift the next day, or you might well do in London, but doing very long days and whatever. It was great. I mean, it was really exciting stuff, but it was not a time at which I could have committed to delivering a script over a period of time, because there were times I had very, very little spare time at all. But then what happened? I was at a convention in Glasgow called Army of Guests. I think it was 2009. I think the DVD of Full Circle or the E-Space trilogy had not long come out. And that's when I first met David and Nick. And David approached me about writing the first Centarans. And Nick had a word with me about that as well. And actually, my first reaction to David was, I don't know if the BBC would let you do that because it's about the origins of the Centarans, but stupidly, kind of almost knocking it away. And then, we stayed in touch. And then it was about a couple of months later, David got in touch and asked if I'd like to write a companion chronicle set in E-Space, which I did, which I suppose was testing me out. And so I did that and wrote this story, Invasion of E-Space. And that seemed to go down well. So then I wrote the first Centarans, which remains one of my personal favourites. And I was so glad to get to do that. And there were scenes I remembered having written for this thing that I'd been commissioned for it by Eric Sayward, and it had gone to the scene breakdown stage, but then was replaced by the two Doctors, so replaced by Robert Holmes. You can't argue. But it was nice to come back to that. I had the scene breakdown, I had the storyline, and I changed it quite a bit. But we would have changed it anyway for TV. But there were things like there's a cockfight early on in it's set in 1872, and the Doctor and Perry come across this illegal cockfight that's going on in the woods, and I remember that as a scene that I'd come up with, back whenever it was, 83, I think it was, and so finally to be doing that and then sat in the studio and hearing it being acted out, and acted out so brilliantly was a real treat.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions, Doctor Who: The Lost Stories, The First Sontarans.
Perry, I give you the surface of the moon. Oh.
What is it? A crashed satellite or something?
We'll fetch you back to the TARDIS. That's better.
What is it? A relay?
To hide the true origin of the signal, Earth.
My name's Jacob Gilly. I own the local tavern.
Just what we need, isn't it, Doctor?
What? God love you, sir. Oh, is someone after you? He tried to kill me. Who did?
What is it?
Look up. Good grief! Sontaran scout ships.
That's very close.
If we run, we might just get to the TARDIS in time. Lead the way! Fighters into space! Stop right there. Get down! Harry! Ah!
Now hear this. This is Fleet Marshal Jaka. There is glory here. Captains of the fleet, the order is full speed for Earth. We must remove this planet from space.
Subscribers get more at bigfinish.com.
But so that's how I got into it, and then it's just carried on from there.
So with the first Sontaran, how far had that storyline got?
I wrote a storyline. I was commissioned. I came down and saw Eric, and we went for lunch, and he commissioned it. He wanted a Sontaran story, so I wrote a storyline, and the scene breakdown was commissioned from then. And the storyline was a 4-parter that then became a 2-parter. They decided to do the 2 50-minute episodes. So the scene breakdown I've got is a 2-parter, and that's the point at which they said, no, sorry, we're not taking it to script. And it was replaced by the 2 Sontarans from from Bob Holmes. That's how far that went.
How many scripts did you get to that sort of point?
I think there was a bit of overcommissioning going on at the time. You talk generally. I mean, I had also been commissioned, but I was commissioned by Chris to do another story for season 19 called the Taurus and Triumvirate, and I don't have any documents for that. I remember very little about it, except it was set in present-day Earth. And there was an element of First Sontarans, as it originally was, of 3 parts of a device coming together, and I think that the Taurus and Triumvirate was about that. That got to the scene breakdown stage as well. Anthony Root came in, I think, before Eric was there as script editor, and I think that was a point at which it went to that stage and then didn't go further because they for whatever reason, I don't remember getting any feedback on it, except that they had the other stories for that season. So it happens, but there was quite a bit of I think under John's producership, there's quite a bit of overcommissioning went on, so they'd get a few storylines, scene breakdowns, and take the pick from what they had.
Right. So the invasion of East-Space brought Lala Ward back. Did you go to the studio and meet her again?
Yeah, I was there for that. Her and Sue Ann Brown. That was good. That was at the Moat, having where again you get the famous Big Finish lunches, and they are as good as their reputation. Toby does a great job at the other studios as well. You get a nice lunch, but a Toby lunch at the Moat is very good. Even the dog, it's imagining the Big Finish lunch, and it's yapping away.
Okay, and then so had you met Nicola and Colin before when you did this last Sontaran?
Yeah, actually, yes, I'd met Nicola and Colin at that convention I mentioned in Glasgow, actually, and we chatted quite a bit then. And in fact, yes, when I was commissioned to write for Big Finish, I said to David I'd like to come into a studio recording just to see the setup. and how practically you do it, because that does have an impact on how you write the script, including things like how many people you have in a scene, that kind of thing. Because the studio, once you get above a certain number, for instance, it can be a little bit problematic because everyone's got their own booths and there's a limited number of booths. Although, again, you can have quite a few characters in the scene. But and the story I came in to do was one of Nev's, and I can't remember the title. I'm ashamed to say. It has the name of the alien in it, and that's what I'm struggling on. But it's a something paradox, and it's a brilliant, brilliant story.
Piscaton paradox, and Piscaton, is that right? The Piscatons, is that thing? Sorry. I'm sorry, Nick. Your listeners, I'm sorry, Nick. I'm really, really sorry. But we've had Nev on the program and talked about it, so I hope I've got it right.
All right, yeah. But Nev's a good friend. He'll be all right. But so I came in for that and was chatting to them again. So so Nicola and I had met at the convention, and Nev was at the convention as well. And then we met again in the studio. And then for the first times, we got to know each other quite well. And I'd kind of go around their place, which was just around the corner, pretty much from the studio at that time. And then we go in together. That was really good. Oh, I tell you what, they did a lovely thing, Colin and Nicola. When I was doing that, my older daughter then was 8, and she was watching me write this thing, and she decided to write her own Doctor Who script at the age of 8. And I mentioned this to Nicola on day one, and she said, "Oh, bring it in, I'll read it." I said, "Yeah, all right, okay." And it was about 8 pages. It's a 4-part story over 8 pages, and it was Doctor Who meets Florence Nightingale. And so I brought it in, and Nicola read it. I said, "You don't need to read the whole thing, that's all right." And then Colin had a look at it and said, "Let's do it, get your camera out." So I got my camera out and filmed them, the two of them, performing this script. And I've still got it, and it's great. Dan Starkey was there as well, watching on, and the rest of the cast. And so they did it. And Colin did the theme music for the cliffhangers and that in between episodes as well. And that was great. And then I brought it back and put it on the computer and said to my daughter, "Come and watch this." And she watched, and there's like Colin and Nicola performing our script. So I said, "There you go. I had Doctor Who. I wrote Doctor Who and got it performed by the Doctor when I was 18. You've done it at 8." And I've got the video of her watching it, and she's like, "Oh." It was great. It's such a lovely thing for them to do as well.
That's awesome.
Really, really good. Lovely. Yeah.
Two lovely people.
As long as you didn't tell your daughter that Big Finish had already done the Doctor meeting Florence Nightingale.
Nah. But, well, actually, funnily enough, the thing I had to change when I wrote First and Tyrants is initially the Mary Celeste was, or the Mary Celeste rather, was a big element of the story. And no one at the time, independent, and I didn't have any knowledge that the Mary Celeste had already featured in The Chase years before. So that was one thing that had to go. The Mary Celeste in that storyline becomes basically the Orbiter that's now in the audio version.
So after a couple of Doctor Who's, you then wrote a Blake 7, The Battleground. How did you? Were you a keen Blake 7 fan as well?
Yeah. I really enjoyed that. And that was a thing again, because I suddenly found myself, there are all these things that the Blake 7 catchphrases, down and safe, or even Zen saying confirmed, I just thought it was great. And again, I had one of those moments when I went to the studio and there was Paul Darrow and Gareth Thomas, as Avon and Blake performing the lines. And that was really good. I really enjoyed that. And then we got Dan back on board for that as well, doing a fantastic job as a guest character, a nasty piece of work, Dan Starkey. Thoroughly enjoyed that. That was a lovely series to be a part of as well. It was a lovely continuing arc. And Mark Platt, who I've got to know well, he wrote the story after mine, and our two stories were linked because they were both on this battleground planet. And he picked up very nicely from things I'd set up there. Yeah, I enjoyed that. It was really good to come on board with Blake 7.
So at what point have you realised that you've now got a huge career as a writer starting again?
Well, it was just, I don't know. It was just, it was nice to keep being asked to do it, and I was doing it at the same time. Fortunately, I was then in a place in policing that I could actually, because I'd become a detective inspector, then a detective chief inspector, and I had long hours at times, but when things like people trying to blow up aircraft in Detroit on Christmas Day, which kind of ended my Christmas on Christmas evening that year. But I did generally have more control over my time, and I could actually commit to the script. So generally, I would be out doing the policing job and the CT job during the day, and then writing at night. And it was just really enjoyable. And working for Big Finish is enjoyable. And again, you're writing things that are going to be produced as well. They're not going to be in development, and audio is nice. And I found this writing for radio back in the day as well, radio drama. It's nice because there's some excellent creative people involved, but not quite so many who can kind of alter, kind of where you're going with it. And Big Finish is so friendly as well, because it's, I've made so many friends through it as well. And there's a particular social circle. There's myself and another bunch of Big Finish writers. We're on a WhatsApp group and chip into each other from time to time. We meet up. A bunch of us went to see Louise Jameson in the Mousetrap in the West End earlier this year. We do things like that, and we had Zoom socials during lockdown and what have you. It's a very, very friendly family at Big Finish, and it's a quite a big family these days as well, and a busy one.
It's getting bigger all the time.
You're going to make Philip cry talking about the Mousetrap. He'd love to see that.
Oh, I'd seen it before years and years ago, and I'd forgotten how much fun it is. And I highly recommend people go and see it. It was a lot of fun, and Louise was excellent. Of course, she was.
Yeah, I've seen the Mousetrap about 15 years ago on the West End.
Yeah.
But I would have loved to have seen Louise in it. But I saw Lou a couple of years ago playing Miss Marple in.
Oh yeah.
It was announced.
Mm.
So yeah, I have seen her on stage, and she's amazing on stage. Just
lovely. Was that in the UK, or did she tour it in Australia?
UK,
right?
Yeah, she came out to Australia, and I organised her for the Doctor Who Club. She did a performance of her.
Is it my gay best friend?
Or... No, the one about the beauty, the facelift. I can't think what it's called. It's a Big Finish original too.
Yeah.
Is it Pulling Faces?
Pulling Faces. Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So she did a performance of Pulling Faces for the Doctor Who Club of Australia. So that was the first time. It was interesting because I'd organised for her to come out, and she said, "Well, you're producing this now. This is the list of things I need on stage." And so she's sending me the props she needs, and so I'm running around organising all these props and a dresser drawer, a mirror, and having to set up the whole thing. Did a bit of stage-handing.
And again, she'd love it. Of course, she's directing now as well.
Yes.
In fact, she directed a Blake 7 of mine. Yeah, Escape from Destiny, and recently directed War Doctor Begins, which
we can't talk about all your work because it's just too vast now. In terms of you're just
there's a few of them now. Yeah.
Have you hit 50? I mean, you're coming up on the website as about 64.
I don't think so. I think it might be more 40s, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, you should be keeping count so you know when you hit number 50.
Well, I've got most of them here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, Time Slip. I did enjoy Time Slip. Star Cops. Oh, that was great. I edit Star Cops as well. I was going to edit that, which that's a particular pleasure of mine.
Well,
and Survivors.
Well, tell us about Star Cops firstly. You just raised that. What do you like?
Yeah, Star Cops was a favourite series of mine. It ran for one series on the BBC back in 1987, but it's about it's about policing in space basically. But the approach to it is kind of to make it real, as if it's like real policing in a real environment. So there's a moon base and there are space stations and things, but the sci-fi trappings are few and far between. I mean, the space stations are generally how we think they'd be 40 years from now. 40 years from 1987, and now we see generally 40 years in the future. But most of them have not got artificial gravity. The stories don't deal with aliens or like fast and light drives or anything like that, the usual trappings. The Starcops do have a version of laser guns, which is, I think, is a little bit odd given the concept, but it's established in the TV series. But for Starcops, I always say to the writers coming in, first and foremost, these are police procedurals. They're investigations, they're murder mysteries and that kind of thing. And it's about the police investigating and problem solving and finding the murderer or whatever. And it's just, it's a really lovely setting. And I just love the work that the writers and everyone have done on it. Just some really good, strong stories, and the reception it got was really, really rewarding. It went, it's gone down really well, and it's something I'm especially proud of, I think. And we got the original cast back, and it has one of the best characters played by Trevor Cooper, Davis, Colin Davis. Is just every time he opens his mouth, he just comes out with, he puts his foot in it, he upsets people. He's just so direct. We toned down some of his sexism and outright misogyny from the TV series. But he's just a fantastic character to put words in his mouth.
He just makes you giggle all the way through.
Yeah. And we have had some really, really good actors take part in that as well.
Being a Chris Boucher creation, did you consult much with him, or has he just handed it over?
I wasn't touching it, but it's one of those things. He signed off on it and was quite happy for us to do what we wanted with it. I was really keen to keep to the ethos, the Chris Boucher ethos for the series. And in fact, for the second, we did a two box set arc called Mother Earth, but for the next set, which was really our second series, box set 3 and 4, really our second series, I suggested, and we went with it. We went to Mars with the Starcops, and that is what Chris was going to do if Starcops had got a second TV series. And then he sent in a lovely email to David that David forwarded, just saying how much he enjoyed what we'd done with it, how impressed he was, and that that was a lovely thing to hear, a lovely thing to read.
Was it actually a full TV series? It was 9 episodes, a very strange number of episodes.
I think it did 9. There was going to be 10, but one of the, I think it was 9 episodes in the end. They were going to do 10, but they lost the last episode because of industrial action. Yeah. And an Australian actor in the series as well, Linda Newton, who we didn't have at first. We had Trevor Cooper and David Caldor as Davis and Nathan Spring. Nathan Spring is the head of the Starcops, and David's an amazing actor. But Linda played a character called Pal Kenzie, one of the Starcops, but she wasn't on board. We didn't know how to get in touch with her. And then there was a Starcops book being written, an excellent book being written, and I think Trevor had been contacted for that. And I forget quite how, but through that we got a message to Linda, and she was very keen to be involved. So she had a couple of cameo appearances in the first box set, and those were recorded in Australia. And then she came over and was in the studio for the remaining sets, which is fabulous. And the cast are just so engaged and obviously so fondly remember the time on Starcops. And again, I've been so complimentary about the stories, the scripts, and how the characters are served by the writers. I'm extremely fond of it, and I'm so pleased it went down so well. I get to do some police writing as well. And again, there was there's a couple of things in there. There's a friend of mine who's an undercover officer who went, he's in this gang, and he was taken for dinner with some people, including someone whose job was actually security within the group. And he said this guy stared at him all the way through the meal, and he was sure he'd been made. But it was just a test that this guy did. It's the new guys, he just stare them out and try and put them under pressure and get them to react. And that was something I added into the very first episode of that, actually. So there's little things here and there that will come into stories. Whenever there's policing, there's always something I'll kind of pull out the bag, just add a little bit of verisimilitude, or just for myself, just something I know is kind of based in reality.
Here it comes. Get ready.
This'll make your fillings rattle.
As the actress said to the bishop, Davis.
From Big Finish Productions, Star Cops Mars, Volume 1.
It's a pleasure to welcome the International Space Police Force to Mars.
Mars really is quite spectacular. Anything useful?
Heard a few stories of water thefts in the colonies.
We're pretty much at the furthest point from the colony now. For now, this is the extent of our empire.
You've got the same message. Whatever happened to Gary Rice? There's been another water theft.
I remind you, Nathan, you are here to advise only.
We should do what I've said all along and sling all tourists off this base and off of Mars.
Anyone behind, Kinsey?
I can't see anyone yet. I don't like this, Nathan.
Neither do I.
We have nothing to hide.
Not even Gary Rice.
Who?
She's also very dead.
Well, that's a right bloody mess.
You know as well as I do, if we leave the Star Cops to keep poking their nose in, then we'll be caught.
You'll put that helmet on and you'll come with us, or I'll keep hold of it and I'll open the hatch.
Yeah. Air supply low. No need to keep on bleating about it.
Be careful, that ground's going to give way.
Oh! What the bloody hell was that?
We're losing power. Engine's shutting down. Brace yourselves.
No good. We'll never make it.
Big Finish. We love stories.
I like you, Kenzie. You're a psycho. Marry me?
Sorry, there's just one more I wanted to mention. Was Time Slip. You wrote Time Slip as well.
Yeah.
Were you a fan of that series? And the interesting approach that you've taken in sort of not rebooting the series as such for audio, but sort of continuing it on.
Yeah, and that was something when David Richardson came to me and Mark with the idea. That was kind of the idea. That Spencer and Cheryl would play the older versions of their characters, Les and Simon from the series back in the 70s, and then we'd have these new characters who would be the younger ones. I was a huge fan of Time Slip. In fact, there's a cliffhanger in the second story, The Time of the Icebox, that terrified me much more than any Doctor Who cliffhanger. And if anyone knows Time Slip, they'll know the one I'm talking about. It's where the character ages, and it was so terrifyingly done. But yeah, it's a very simple concept. Two teenagers who discover this time barrier. They can just get down their hands and knees and crawl through it and finish up in a different time, and even in a different location. And they meet future versions of themselves, or older versions of their younger versions of their parents. And when I revisited the stories, ahead of writing it, I just thought incredibly gripping, and it was lovely. Yeah, I wrote a 6-part story called the Age of the Death Lottery, and that was such a pleasure to write. And when I did the outline, my very first rough outline, the 6 episodes, I'd always say roughly, right, we're going to do this in that episode, this in that one, that one, that one, that one. And I don't think I've had anything. And a 6-parter usually would be problematic, but I've never had anything that just came out so smoothly right away. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. In terms of the Death Lottery, the idea of it is it's in the future. It's at a time when the population's got to the stage where they actually run a lottery to cull members of the population to keep the numbers down. And I went into that a bit of rationale for it. Why would people accept it? What checks and balances would they have to ensure that people didn't just try and do a runner, or people didn't try and substitute themselves for loved ones and all that kind of thing. Worked it all through, and then came up with this story that I was really pleased with. And then we have Sarah Sutton come in to do a character again who has has a future version of herself, and she actually had a scene where she acts with herself, which I think is one of the most impressive acting jobs I've ever seen done. Maybe anywhere, never mind just Big Finish, but anywhere. In fact, when she was considering the role, she was sent that scene, and then she read it and then came on board. And I'm so glad she did. Again, doing something different from Nyssa. People don't know Sarah Sutton played Nyssa in Doctor Who and for Big Finish, and she actually was turned up in a Star Cops of mine called Hostage. And again, she was just excellent in it. Yeah, I hope Sarah does more of my stuff as well. She's so good, such a good actor. But yeah, Time Slip. big fan of it. I was so pleased that Big Finish came around to doing it.
Now, another series you've had a lot to do with from the very start and continue to do so is The Survivors. So, how did you end up coming to write for The Survivors? And you've actually played a very pivotal role in terms of a lot of major storylines and driving the plots. So, was it another passion of yours?
Yes, yeah, I remember Survivors from first broadcast very, very well. It made a huge impression on me at the time. I'd have been about 13 or 14 when it's going out. Yeah, the involvement was, as usual, it was an email from Big Finish from David Richardson, and I was absolutely delighted to get on board with that. And yeah, and that was another one, kind of like when Linda Newton getting involved with Star Cops. Initially, we didn't have Carolyn Seymour. We weren't in touch with her to play Abby Grant, one of the lead characters, and then yeah, I think we'd written the storylines, just about the script, and then somehow contact was made with Carolyn, or Carolyn made contact because she'd heard about it and was very keen to be on board, and I was asked to write a new scene introducing my episode, which was the third episode of the first box set, called Judges, where Jenny and Greg, Ian McCulloch and Lucy Fleming, are going off to London, and they're saying goodbye to Abby, played by Carolyn. And then that was the very first thing recorded, I'm pretty sure, for Survivors at all at Big Finish, ahead of everything else. So it was great. It was great to be able to write a scene with all three of those characters, but then take it forward and have Greg and Jenny. And it is Survivors, I would say, is my favourite Big Finish gig. I enjoy it all, but Survivors is one of those things. I think where it's particularly compelling, I don't think there's any other series like it for, if you listen to it, you think, how would I do in that situation? If all the trappings of modern life are taken away. And I remember listening, the first time I listened to it, I was walking around Croydon. It was a big town in South London, and there's buses and cars, there's aircraft in the sky, there's, electric powered things all around you. I think if all those things are gone, what would you do? And how would you do? Would you be a good survivor? Or would you just get depressed or succumb? Would you just let others trample all over you? Would you be positive, or, would you succumb? Basically, yeah, how would you do? Would you be able to just go back to basics? And there are a lot of moral issues that face people in Survivors as well. And also some of the most tragic things happen to people as well. I mean, God, we put those characters through hell, and we're continuing to do it with the new stuff that's coming up.
It's so bleak.
But it's good, and I've just been asked to do lovely things. I mean, it was great when, Greg came back into the series. I think it's series 6. I did an episode called Lockup, and that was so nice. And we had Abby and Greg meeting up, which they hadn't been able to do in the TV series, because Abby is only in series 1. Yeah, and I think my all-time favourite scripts for Big Finish, actually, and it's not just the scripts, but how they were produced and acted as well, from series 5 of our big Survivors, where I wrote episode 1 and episode 4 of a story where the death, this plague, this pandemic, came back for a while, and people started dying from it again. And I actually did a lot of research there into bacteria and viruses and how they change and how there are different strains, all this stuff that is kind of common knowledge now, and stuff that can be seen under a microscope and can't be seen under a microscope. And actually the evolution of a virus was key to that. But it was a story of kind of a Typhoid Mary character called Carol Baker, who's a nurse who actually infects people without having symptoms herself. And Neve McIntosh played that character just amazingly. And there's a scene towards the end of episode 1. I won't describe it in case anyone wants to go, it'd be too spoilery, but it was brilliantly done, brilliantly acted. It sends a chill through me every time I hear it. And Ken Bentley did a fantastic job directing it, and just let it go on, just that nice length of time to just really chill the bone. And
working with another character who I really loved. It's an awful scene, and I was very upset. Wasn't happy with
it. It was one of those when we finished recording it. I mean, it was just quiet, and we just looked at each other and went, oh my God. Oof. Wow. Should we all take a moment? Yeah.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions, Survivors Series 5.
It's a new strain, an evolution of the virus that almost wiped us out in the first place. It's the death. It's back.
This is a matter of life and death. I've seen entire communities destroyed by this epidemic.
Angel of Death! The Angel of Death! That's what you are!
Ow! And the reason I'm staying back here is I might be infected too.
All those first steps rebuilding society, everything we've achieved in the past 2 years, it's all for nothing.
Every place that woman passes through, same pattern. She spreads infection, there's illness, death. Then those that can walk just abandon their homes.
A greater purpose awaits you. Your sacrifice will be our saving.
I can't believe it, Craig. The death. It's come back.
Big Finish. We love stories.
I'd like to think we'd do better than they did, but having seen how people reacted with Taurus,
I think the strapline we usually got on the blurb for these is that, you know, after the death, because if people don't know, the Survivors is about a pandemic that wipes out like 99.9% of the population. So we've lost all the trappings of normal life, although some of them are coming back in the new series that we're doing. You know, so very few of the population survive, and it's about how they survive. But the strapline we use is that, some of the best of humanity has survived, but some of the worst of humanity as well. And there's just nasty characters around who do nasty things to people. Usually Abby Grant and Jenny Richards.
So after it's been 4 or 5 years since the last box set, and now there's 2 more coming out.
Series 9. I'm not sure when we did that. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But yes, and I'm script editing the new lot. They're all recorded. They're in the can. They're done. It's called Survivors New Dawn. 6 episodes, and it's 20 years after the death. It's 15 years after the events of Series 9, and society is beginning to come together again. There's a government of sorts established in Cambridge, and there's even in the UK there's a general election in the looming to kind of to re-establish proper democracy. There are occasional air flights. They're not that common, but they're done mostly run by the government. There's international flights as well, and there's some contact between the UK and Europe, for instance. But the world gradually is getting back on its feet. So some of the trappings of civilization are coming back, but there are still those nasty elements out there, and some people prepare to do nasty things. I can't wait for people to hear it. So New Dawn 1. At the time recording, this is the 18th of October, and it's coming out next month, so November 21.
Should be great. Now, you've also been doing some Space 1999.
Oh, no, that is another. There's so many times I've had these emails where I just go, oof, oh yes. Star Corps was one. Well, actually, most of them. I think Time Slip. Oh my God, Bob Blake 7. Make it every single one I've ever been asked to do. John Hurt as a War Doctor. Oh my God. But Space 1999. Yeah. Oh, I remember that so fondly. I remember the first episode, watching it, going. I'd read the novelization before I saw it. I remember newspaper 2-3 page spreads about it coming up, and it was a huge thing. I mean, it's one of the most expensive series ever made at the time as well. And I even got my little dinky eagle here. Hello. I've actually got another one of these downstairs, which is done by Eagle Moss, which is in the proper kind of livery. It's a nice little thing. It sits on a plinth, a little stand rather. That's a lovely little model that they've just started doing. But that's another thing of yeah, you just something about Moonbase Alpha and Commander Koenig and computer and all the Eagles, the Eagle transporters are, of which they seem to have a never-ending supply. I mean, it's a moon base with about 300 people on it, and they've got these Eagles that blow up. 2 or 3 of them blow up in every episode. There's more of them. There's more of them come around the corner next week. Yeah, that was good fun. And I was asked to come up with 2, because it was a mix of reworkings of TV episodes and original stories. And I was asked to write 2 original episodes for Volume 1. So Nick had done the excellent Breakaway, which is a reworking of the pilot episode of Space 1999 that came out as an individual release and did extremely well, quite rightly. So yeah, then I was asked to do these 2 original episodes, which is, yeah, really, really, really good fun to do. I'm pinching myself, and yeah, I'm doing Space 1999.
We recently chatted with Pamela Salem, and of course she came back to do your episode, Tool and Poos. So Tool and
Poos.
Get it right, Philip. Get it right.
Tool and Toos.
Tool and Toos. I got it right. And she commented on your script when we spoke to her, and how much she loved coming back to do it. So once again, another side step you managed to do there as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And again, Robots of Death is one of my all-time favorites. And that was Pull and Twist. That was a great one to do. That was another one that was done as like an investigation.
It's a cop show, 2-hander cop show.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, who's the killer? And I was really pleased. I quite like the clues I left lying around on that one. And what was nice, it kind of stands alone. It didn't really link in too much with all the other stuff that's going on in Caldor.
No, it's very much a standalone episode.
Yeah, it tied in more to the 4th Doctor story I'd done, The Sons of Caldor, with the Robots of Death, which that's another one. I've got very fond memories of that one. Yeah. They're all fond memories, I think.
Oh, I know. I mean, I don't think we should actually have worked with. I mean, I'm surprised. I thought Dwayne might have raised Return to Skaro as well, because I know that's one of his favourites.
Oh, who's that? Sorry.
Me. That's Return to Skaro is
one
of my favourites. I think it was the not only the script but the sound design. The whole package on that was just absolutely incredible. Really it was Howard Carter, wasn't it? It was just unbelievable sound design that just brought that to life. It was all good.
The sound designers don't get enough credit. And in fact,
I agree.
Have you interviewed any of the sound designers? You should.
Benji.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They just do an amazing job, and I've absolutely no idea how they do it. But yeah, fantastic job. Return to Skaro. Yeah, again, writing for David Bradley and the original TARDIS crew was quite something. And if again talking about my favourite scripts, The Barbarians and the Samurai, which is the first Doctor story I did, I do love that. I'd actually written a storyline that I submitted to Eric Sayward back in the day for Doctor Who, called The Dark Samurai, and The Barbarians and the Samurai lifted out quite a bit of that. The Dark Samurai had a sci-fi element to it. Eric had said it would be far too expensive to do, and I think he was right. I'd seen Shogun and Red Shogun by James Clavell, and I just gone a little bit overboard with it, I think. But we could do it on audio, and it's a pure historical, and I love it to bits. And we had a Japanese cast, and again, they were very complimentary. I mean, I like my research. I love my research, but on that one, I went to town. And almost every single page of the script, I thought, oh, hang on, right, they're going in a kitchen. What kind of door will it have? What will the floor be like? What kind of utensils will they have? Because you got to describe the ambience again for the sound designers, and what kind of implements would they have? What would they have on the floor? So, and I remember spending 3 or 4 hours studying up on these things called tatami mats, this Japanese flooring, and finding out that on auspicious occasions they have to alter the layout of the tatami mat, all that sort of thing. That for any other story you'd be fine, but just thinking, right, they're going through a door here. What kind of door would it be? They're in a dungeon. What kind of door would it be? A cage? What would it be? And would they had to make a bomb, and it'd be right. What precursors could they have in Japan in the 19th century? Because they're shut off from the rest of the world. And now I'm because of my time in counterterrorism, I know a lot about explosive precursors, and I was going through things that I knew, and they wouldn't possibly have had access to any of it. But then I found a way that they could potentially manufacture black powder, so I went with that. But so much research, but I was so pleased with it at the end of the day. And it was nice that the Japanese cast were so complimentary about it as well. That's what I tell you what, that's one if I say to people, if someone said, which of your stories would you like me to listen to? I think that's one I'd say, yeah, I'm quite proud of that one. Yeah.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions. Doctor Who, The First Doctor Adventures, Volume 2.
What's happening?
A slight miscalculation, that's all.
Slight?
Where have you come from?
Beyond the mountains? You could say that.
Very far beyond. Fascinating.
There is someone over there. They can't be dangerous. They've got a kite. No one dangerous flies kites.
What is that strange plumage that grows from your head?
What, this? It's called hair.
A strange plumage? Of all the nerve, I'll have you know this is the height of fashion.
A game? What have you done? What have you done?
Up there at the top of the hill. People on horseback. Is that armor?
Those are Japanese samurai.
A cabinet of some kind. A geyser. Why should it be here? Strange. Summon the samurai! Yeah!
Going by their armor, I'd say we're in the late 18th or 19th century, and that's very bad for us.
Why?
Because in this time, foreigners are banned from Japan, and the penalty for being caught here is death.
This is monstrous, son.
You have disobeyed me. They will die. Riflemen, take aim!
The further we travel away from Earth, the less chance there is of this working. There is literally no time like the present, or, in this case, the past. Or do I mean the future? Well, there's only one way to find out.
Now, Doctor...
Big Finish. We love stories.
So when you get an idea, or when you get told what you're going to do, it sounds like you do a lot of research first, a lot of planning. Does the script just come after you've done your research? Do you just sit down and just write? It just flows? Or?
Oh, that'd be nice. Oh, that'd be lovely. I wish. No, it's like you. So I said time slip. Actually, the layout of that came to me fairly quickly, and writing that wasn't too bad. But there are others. The Quest of the Engineer was one, because it was quite an unusual environment. It's kind of a planet-sized ship with all these shifting compartments and things. The geography of it was a bit of a problem. And I had I got about 2/3 of the way through the 4th episode, and I had a real problem with how I was going to actually get things to happen the way I wanted them to happen, the way I'd put them in the storyline. I finished up having to throw out about 4,000 words. I went back to almost the beginning of episode 3 and totally changed it. And that cost me a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of discarded words. For every script, I've got a document called cut bits, because I always, when I cut a scene, I'll dump it in that Word document, because I might want to go back to it and nick lines and whatever, or I might want to put it back. And for that, I think I had a cut bits document that was almost as long as a script. It was thousands and thousands of words. But it was worth it. It was worth it. I was really pleased at the end, but that was problematic. Sometimes it comes fairly easily, but a script is a lot of it is problem solving. Early on with the invasion of E-Space, I had to get Romana and Adric off of a ship that's just about to go through a CVE, and I had to get a reason for them to want to leave and a method for them to leave, and that took me 3 or 4 days. And I was scribbling things down on paper and throwing them on the floor, and one of those things, when you see what happened, you think, well, that's fairly straightforward, but it's only straightforward after you've actually come up with a solution. The opening scenes of Domain of the Void, one of my early ones as well, that took me 2 or 3 days of going at it. And I started in the TARDIS initially, and it's hard to see why it was a problem. And again, when you see the final product, you think, well, that seems fairly obvious the way to do it. It's only obvious because that is kind of what I did at the end of the day, and it was the best solution. But it's, there are problems there. But I do like my research. I do like to be accurate. And I tell you what, there is. I don't know whether to mention it. Oh, I'll mention it. There was a thing where I mentioned this original drama, Transference, and I'd written a thing as a police officer goes to visit someone and mentions, and he wants to talk to them about his car, and he mentions the registration number, the license number of the car, the number plate, and it was written just as the letters. Do you own a vehicle, like say AFM 123B? And I wasn't at that recording, and someone decided he's a police officer, so he'll do this in the phonetic alphabet. And well, one thing, if I'd been there, I'd have said, no, he wouldn't. He's speaking to a member of the public. Police officers don't speak phonetic alphabet to members of the public. What they do though, if they use it, they get it right. So I'm listening to this, and I've got the character saying, do you own vehicle Alpha Foxtrot? I'm trying to think what they did, because I know it should be Alpha Foxtrot Mike 123B, and it was came out as Alpha Foxtrot Mother 123B, and I thought, they got the phonetic alphabet wrong, and I've tried to track this down. I've actually spoken to people over there. In fact, as a friend of mine is one of the actors, and I was trying, where did this come from? How did it happen? He couldn't remember. Someone chipped in with it be phonetic alphabet, and then they got the phonetic alphabet wrong. And again, for someone who loves his research, and again, there's a thing, people are going to think I wrote that as Alpha Foxtrot Mother, 123B. But that's just about, these things happen, But I do like to get things right. So I wrote a Third Doctor story, Storm of the Horrifacts, and I did an awful lot of research into the Navy and the language. The opening scenes have got like depth charges being launched. They don't call them depth charges; they call them mortars. And there's a particular language around that I wanted to get right. Another story, Vengeance of the Stones, an early one I did, starts off with 2 RAF jets in what would be, unit dating aside, it's this mid-70s. And I researched particularly what type of aircraft were the RAF used for training out of RAF Lossiemouth in, say, 1973. Just the sort of thing, I just wanted to get it right.
This is making me think of the story that's the background behind me, the House of Kingdom. Yeah. Was that one of the stories that you had to? Was this a story that you had to write fast, because this was a pandemic story, wasn't it, where David Tennant suddenly became available? Were you given a short time frame to write this one?
I don't remember it being a particularly short time scale. No, I think it was okay. David was doing quite a lot for us during the pandemic. I don't think so. It wasn't one we had a lot of time on, but there are others that are certainly under more pressure. I think the War Doctor stories had to be written that I did for John Hurt. Those had to be written fairly smartly.
Just as a bit of trivia, the Anya's grandfather's name, Merrick. It's unusual to have Merrick as a first name. That's usually a surname. But it's actually my dad's name, so that stood out to me.
I have no idea where that came from. I think it just sounded good. And then we got Kevin McNally to play the part, which is even better. But yeah, I think it's just something you don't know where these things come from. I think I just said Merry Kingdom. That sounds good. Yeah, I have no idea where that came from. Oh, actually, what I usually this might be it. What I usually do when I'm picking a name, and it can even be an alien name, I'll pick a movie. Sometimes a TV series, usually a movie, and I'll go on IMDb and I'll open up to all cast and crew, and then I'll just scan down the list and I'll see something that just grabs me. And I think either that name, that first name, second name, or I'll see a name and I think, right, I can tweak that just a bit to make it a little alien. So that's almost certainly that's what I did there. Yeah, I think Barbarians and the Samurai, I was looking up Japanese actors and Japanese films and things. I found that a good source of names. You just look down the list and then you just see something that that's right for that character. I used back in the day, I used to use a phone book, but try and find one of those things now.
So you've written now the equivalent of about 5 or 6 seasons of Doctor Who.
Probably.
What is there left to do? What are you still keen to do?
always more Doctor Who. More Star Cops would be nice. I don't know.
More everything by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it's all just. I don't think anything I've got particular yearning to do. It was, I think, Star Cops and Time Slip were two things I always had in the back of my mind. It would be lovely to do. Second Doctor story would be good because Patrick Troughton is my Doctor. So Second Doctor. Oh, the other thing, I mean, actually, something we haven't mentioned yet is Unit. Is another thing. I mean, Unit was the first series that the first one to the modern era that Big Finish were licensed for. I remember that wasn't an email, that was a phone call from David. This was one of those tell no one conversations, and I'd never known anything like it for storylines just being redrafted, and this has got to be punchy, it's got to be faster paced for the modern series, and it was going to Stephen Moffat, and so there's quite rightly, there's quite a heavy hand on the tiller, and we were reworking, just making sure those first storylines were right and whatever. And now, several series later, again, I'm script editing Unit as we've got this new range, which is very exciting. Unit Nemesis, which is a story going to be told, an arc that's over 16 episodes, 4 box sets. We've got the first one, Unit Nemesis 1, Between Two Worlds, featuring the 11, and with Tom Baker as a curator coming in as well. That's coming out again in November, same month as Survivor's New Dawn. And that should, very excited about that. We've got Unit Nemesis 2 in the can. And I've actually just this morning, just before I spoke to you, I sent off my draft storyline for the first episode of Unit Nemesis 3. And yeah, I'm very excited about this. And, it grows. There's some really, really good stuff, some really good writing. But we got Ice Warriors in the first set as well, in a very good story written by John Dorney, set in Australia.
About time. I love stories set in Australia.
I bet you do. Yeah.
Well, he's half Australian, so it's appropriate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's John's so good. He's done an episode in the second box set. When I read the first draft and I was salivating. It's so good. You're gonna have to wait for that one, but it's a real beauty. I don't think we did hardly anything with it. It was, for a second draft, it was so good.
Yeah, no, looking forward to them too. Now, I understand. I think if I've worked it out properly, you actually are the first writer to write the Time War. The Sontaran Ordeal in the
Sontaran Ordeal, for Classic Doctor's New Monsters, which originally was called Monster Tales. So Eighth Doctor and Sontarans with a new Doctor flavour, in fact played by Dan Starkey and Chris Ryan from the series, from the modern series. And and I pretty much locked off the storyline on that, and then got an email from David saying, we can use the Time War, just out of the blue. And it's, oh, wow. And then that gave me a really interesting thing I could do with the story, right in the opening scene with this planet. And there's a little ripple of the Time War, just a little flick of the Time War just washes over the planet and totally changes its history, devastates it. And there was just really, really nice things to do there with situations and characters. That was a nice thing. There are a few things like that, again, where we kind of lock something off and then there's a new element gets thrown into it. And that can be a new situation, it can be a new theme, it can be a new story element, like something from the new series like that. Or it can be a new character that we're asked to, I'm asked to introduce. That happened fairly recently. To really good effect. I thought, how am I going to fit this person in? But it works to really good effect. And sometimes it's, there's an actor, maybe a major character that you've drafted in the storyline, even written in a script on one occasion, but then they're no longer available. So you have to replace them with another character who's maybe, not someone who's known to the Doctor Who audience, that kind of thing. But that's that's all part of production and issues and availability. And I'll discuss some of it, like when Linda Newton becomes available for Star Corps, was in touch. What a lovely, lovely surprise that was, and I, it was great to go back to these stories that we'd pretty much finished off and just rewrite and rejig. And the same with when Carolyn became available for Survivors in that first series. You've got some extra work to do, but very, very happily, absolutely.
Well, listen, Andrew, thank you so much. You brought hours of pleasure for so many people along with all your stories, and you've even given us hours of pleasure now too.
I thought when you said hours of pleasure, I thought you were talking about this podcast. We have been on for a bit, haven't we?
But just thank you so much for all you've done, and we look forward to what's coming next.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope people like it, and I think you will. Yeah. It's people done a good job on it.
From Big Finish Productions, Unit Nemesis, Volume 1.
It looks like a stone arch, and it's glowing, giving off this bright light.
Well, at this stage, alien seems likely. A stone arch that gives off a glowing light covered with unrecognised symbols dating from 16 million years ago. It's not human.
Professor Merchant.
Who are you?
Captain Josh Carter, Unit. Who the blazes are you?
A castaway. He's right, though. We can be nasty.
Oh, I know just how nasty Time Lords can be.
I think they spotted us!
Yes, I've got that feeling too.
It's another Ice Warrior ship.
Your organization is not known to me.
Which just goes to show how discreet it is.
Jackie! Oh, Osgood!
We're not interested in those baubles. They're yours. Where's our 3? Not now.
Keep your hair on, soldiers.
Shoot anyone that gets in your way.
Hello.
Who are you?
Allow me to introduce the curator of the Undergallery.
Have we met? You remind me of someone.
You work for the royal household.
My duties, sir, are concerned with the new National Gallery in Trafalgar Square.
Oh, I'm in heaven. Who are you? Where are you from?
I'm the curator. That's all anyone needs to know. I take care of things.
Big Finish. We love stories.
Well, that sounds promising.
There's a but, and it's a big but.
I hate big buts.
And you cannot lie?
All right, Philip. Lots of juicy details in that interview. That was a great one. Thank you so much, Andrew Smith. I hope you enjoyed that too, Philip.
It was amazing. Andrew's just written so much content. Such a huge variety in nearly every single series.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
So many ranges.
Yeah, it's just amazing. So it was fascinating to talk to, and just an all-round fascinating guy. And some of the stories he told before and afterwards about his time in the police force, which we're not putting here because we're not a police force podcast. Amazing and very funny.
All right, we'll go straight into our recommendations. Thank you for listening so far, because it was quite an extensive interview. But we've got a couple of things to recommend, and I'm just going to recommend. Actually, no, it's not my turn. It's your turn, Philip.
Don't take my turn, Dwayne. It's my turn. I'm going to recommend an Andrew Smith, surprise, surprise, but his first novel. So when after he wrote Full Circle, the TV script, he was able to turn that into his own Target novel. What an amazing, wonderful thing to have a Target novel. It'd be so exciting. It's been in an audiobook recently with Matthew Waterhouse reading. Actually, I really enjoy Matthew's voice, and he's reading much more as an adult, so he's not trying to do his younger voice, except for when he's playing Adric.
No,
but
he's good.
But he's a really solid performer. I think often maligned, I think Matthew Waterhouse was, in terms of what he brought to the role. And he's actually a very talented actor, and he voices this really well. John Leeson does all the K9 bits. There's a lovely music score with it as well, and it's just an all-right good novel. So yeah, the audiobook of Full Circle.
Excellent.
By Andrew Smith. What about you, Dwayne? What have you been listening to?
Well, I'm going to not recommend something written by Andrew Smith, but something that he is associated with. I'm going to recommend Dalek Universe 3 because it just released recently, and I've been listening to that over the last week. I haven't finished it yet, so I'm still going on it. Very, very good stuff. The whole series is magnificent, set in the universe of Dalek's master plan, really.
Yep.
And it's sort of galaxy spanning, universe spanning. And I love this box set because the final 2 episodes are kind of a single story joined together, I think, because I haven't got to the last story yet, but I'm still in the second one. But it's virtually a sequel to Destiny of the Daleks. It takes up where Destiny of the Daleks left off, with Davros going off into the prison ship, and we meet up with Davros not long after that. So very interesting to see David Tennant working against the Terry Malloy Davros. Very, very good stuff. And I've fallen back in love with David Tennant over this series, I can tell you. It's done it for me. He's brought me right back.
Well, I never left him, but I'm glad you're enjoying him.
All right. That'll do us for this instalment of the Sirens of Audio. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a pleasure to have your company, and we'll catch you all next time. Toodles.
See you later.
This has been the Sirens of Audio, episode 89, Star Cop, with our special guest Andrew Smith and your hosts Philip Edney and Dwayne Bunny. Next episode, it's time for another instalment of
We've Got Randomoids,
where we'll be taking a look at 2 multi-doctor stories, The 4 Doctors and The Light at the End. Theme music by the Jackpot Golden Boys. Drop us a like or comment on your favourite podcast app. Our Facebook, Twitter and Instagram handles are @Audio Sirens, and our website is sirensofaudio.com. And if you've discovered Doctor Who via the TV series, listened to a few audio dramas, gone back to the TV series, then returned to audio for your Doctor Who fix, then guess what? You've come full circle, because audio drama...